talk a little bit about ES2015. Not allowed to call it ES6 anymore, guys. They changed the name. So ES2015. How many people actually use it right now? Wow, nice. Good. So about half, I would guess. Half of you have at least used it at some point, I would say. Anyway, so this talk I'm going to kind of go over just briefly what the features are and how well they're currently supported in all the different browsers. And just kind of give an overview. I'm sure even those of you that have used a lot of these features already will be surprised at some of the features that you may not have heard. Even just going through putting this talk together, I discovered a few features I haven't heard of yet. So, anyway. Clicker's not working. There we go. So currently there's 629 different features in ES2015, and that's breaking it down to like the smallest possible pieces. So on say an average, I don't have an exact number on this, but the overall features I would say around 100, but then those features are all broken down into their constituent components. And so on all the modern browsers right now, we have about 58% of those features that are fully supported, or at least partially supported. So I was a little bit surprised on some of these numbers as I was kind of researching this and going through and figuring out which browsers support what or how many things they support already. So IE11, surprisingly, 16%. Yeah, not bad. But the real shocker was Edge, which is Microsoft's new browser. They have a shocking 83% of these features supported right now. That's as of 2 weeks ago when I first put this particular slide together. And I'll tell you that this stuff is moving so fast that that number is already inaccurate by now. Firefox, you're looking at about 75% of support on that. So rock on, Firefox. Good job. Chrome, I was a little bit sad when I realized that Chrome only had 65%. I'm a Chrome fanboy, so I'm like, Chrome, what are you doing? Like, I thought they were going to be like 95 or something like that. And then Safari, which nobody cares about, 56%. So, but might as well mention them, right?
Yeah, the sad thing is that every college kid out there in the world who buys a Mac uses
Right.
Safari.
Well, they don't know any better. So
is Google trying to boycott them, or they got some other deal?
No. So all these companies, Microsoft, Mozilla, and Google, I know Google at least, I'm not sure about the other two, have made kind of a commitment to get as close to 100% as possible within this year. So for desktop at least. As far as mobile, just forget about it. You're not going to get these features on mobile right now unless you just happen to be only supporting iOS 9 Safari, because right now they actually, surprisingly, Apple has put a lot of effort into adding a lot of support for that in iOS 9. But there's a handful, I could count them on two hands, how many features are supported right now in other mobile browsers. So if you want to support mobile and you don't want to use something like Babel or something like that, just forget about it. Just stick with ES5 right now. Anyway, so these other companies, Microsoft, Google, and so on, they're focusing right now on just getting all the support in desktop first. So I figure, 2016 or 2017, maybe they'll have, some decent support on mobile by then. Anyway, so that's how many features we have currently on the major browsers. But if we take a look at just the Evergreen browsers, which if you guys haven't heard that term before, these are browsers that will update automatically, like Chrome, Firefox. I think Edge does now, but IE11 does not. And so Safari obviously is out of the question because that has to go through an operating system update to get that updated. So if we narrow it down the set a little bit more, it's a much more impressive number there, 74%. It's not too bad. And I'm kind of an idealist, so for the rest of this talk, I'm mainly going to focus on these browsers. So the Evergreen browsers, what features do we have supported for this? So we're going to start basically with what the best case scenario and kind of work our way back from that. And then I'm not really going to focus on Node, but how many people are using Node? Okay, keep your hands up. How many people are not using Node version 4 or 5? Put your hand down if you have 4 or 5. Couple of hands still. You guys, go upgrade. What are you waiting on? So, if you're still on like 0.10 or 11 or 12, go ahead and jump on 4 at least. Anyway, so in Node, we've got about 53%. That's for Node 4 to about 59%. That's why the bar is darker there. It's the difference between the two. So 59% on Node 5. And as you guys, I'm sure you know, the 4 version is their long-term support. So you should be at least using that by now. All right, so obviously Babel is not a browser. I don't want to actually go into details about what browser or what Babel supports right now, but Babel is huge, so I figured I'd give it a little mention here. When you hear or think about Babel, what's the number one thing you think about? Yeah, it transpiles. It takes ES2015 code and turns it into ES5 code, right? So you would think a tool that does something like that, they must have awesome coverage, right? Probably 95%. What do you guys think? Anybody want to shout out a guess? How much do you think they have? 100%? 30%? E of little faith. I was a little shocked to find out. I knew they didn't support everything. I know there's a lot of features that they don't have covered yet, but shockingly, only 75%. So they're right about where Firefox is right now. So think about that for a moment. If you're using Babel to transpile ES6 code currently to ES5, you are already using the same features you could be using on Firefox without Babel or anything else. Anyway, so that was kind of a little bit of a shocker. So here's just a quick breakdown of the browsers, just so you can get a good visual on where they're at currently. So Edge was in the lead at the time that I made this graph anyway, and things are changing very quickly. So, do you have a question?
There's different presets for that, isn't there? If you want to
right, so
it's the straw man closer to.
I can give you guys a link to where I'm getting these stats from after the talk is over, but I assume that the guy that did all the research for me, he is counting all of the different plugins and whatnot. Anyway, so you can see Edge is in the lead currently.
So these numbers are from some kind of compatibility test suite or what?
Right, yeah, I'll send a link out on the meetup so everybody can take a look at it. But this guy, Kanga X, is his username. I forget what his real name was. It's spacing right now. But he just, I guess on a whim, went and put all this data together. And I don't know what his sources are, but he put all the data together, and I think what he's doing is he's running test suites against these things to see which features actually work.
So these test suites, are they officially part of the spec, or is it just?
Yeah, so everything we're talking about today is officially part of the ES2015 specification. So that's one thing I was going to mention in the beginning, is that ES2015 is kind of a really big hurdle for all of us right now, because we haven't had an update to JavaScript since 2005 or whatever it was, when ES 5.1 was finalized, and still, just a couple of years ago, some browsers didn't even fully support that yet. And they had years to work on it. Anyway, so this particular update is huge because of that, because it's been so long that we had any kind of updates to the language. But all the ECMA organization, they have made a commitment to keep, having their little talks or whatever and discussing which features should be officially part of the specification and finalize those things at least once a year. So every year we'll have minor updates from now on. This one particular update, it's huge because there's a lot of things that people wanted to get in. Anyway, so a little bit of a hurdle, but it should be a lot better in the future, in the following years. All right, so we'll get into some of what these features are and which of those have the most support or the best support currently. So obviously I'm going to start with the good. What is fully supported right now? And again, this is just Evergreen Browsers. That's the scenario for now. All right, so starting off with, we have some object literal extensions. You guys see that all right? I'm looking at that TV and I can barely see it. Hopefully you guys can see it okay, but if not, you can turn around. There's a TV behind you, one over here. Anyway, so we have a few new features, like we have these computed properties here, which allows you to put an expression in as the property name. This is something people have been wishing for the last 10 years, I'm sure. Like, I used to spend a lot of time on the IRC channel for JavaScript, and a lot of people would, like, new to the language, and one of the first things they would come in there and ask is like, how do I make a property name on an object from like a variable or something like that? And obviously, you know, use the square brackets and you can do that from a variable, but more complicated expressions, now we can do that as well. So another one that's pretty cool is the shorthand properties, where you just put the variable name and it guesses the rest. So if you have a variable named name, I probably should have picked a better example there, and you create an object with that variable, it will make the property be name and take the value from the variable named name. Anyway. So shorthand methods, so it's just another way of writing a method without using the word function. And then you have keyed string or string keyed shorthand methods, which it's basically the same thing, but now it's like, you know, you put a space in there, you put a smiley face in it, whatever. And then computed shorthand methods, which of course is just a combination of the two. And computed accessors. Does everybody know what accessors are in objects? It's like when you have a getter and a setter. Anyway, so accessors can now use computed property names as well. And then here's a fun one, rest parameters. There's not much to say about it other than every other argument to this function will be stuck into y as an array. So that dot 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 there tells it any more arguments that you find, put them all into this y variable, or this y parameter. So pretty straightforward. And a spread operator, look familiar? So it's kind of like the rest parameter operator's little cousin or something. Or maybe this is the bigger cousin because it does more. But you can take an array and you can spread its values over something else. Like you can spread it into a function or something like that. And you can spread lots of things. You can, so on the right there you can see an example. Oops. Spread all the things. You can see an example of spreading it into a function. You can spread a string into a function that every letter in that string will become an argument in the function and so on. And even, you know, special Unicode characters will work.
Can you go back to that?
Sure.
So do you have 6 different examples right there, or is it left,
Yes.
right? Okay.
So 6 different examples, but these are kind of related to each other.
So on
These
the
ones are
second
not.
line, the dot 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 1, 2, 3 would split it into an array of characters.
Right, so you have an array, the first element being 1, the second one being 2, third one is 2.
It doesn't spread into an array, like, so like in the bottom left corner example there, right, where it's 1 dot 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 2, 3, 4. The result
Right.
of that is an array that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So it essentially
Right,
takes
so-
each element of the array and passes it individually in. So what you get out of that spread operator is not an array.
Depends on what you're spreading and how you're spreading it. So in this case, this string would spread into an array because we're not applying it to a function or anything. Here, it would spread into, you know, the arguments for that function. Here, like you were saying, this becomes what basically just flattens this array down to 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. It, you know, something array-like over there. I don't know if it's actual array, like you can type of and it says array, but.
Left hand, does that become a string or something? Or spreading an array?
Well, so here you would only do this like in a function, or you know, in here.
Okay, it was by itself, so that's
I'm just trying to simplify things. You have a question?
You mentioned Unicode on the bottom right.
Yes.
Is it still UCS2 or is it actually like UTF-8 now?
Yeah, so it should be UTF-8. I'm not familiar with the first one you mentioned. Was it UC2? UCS2? Yeah, I'm not familiar with
There
that.
is some weird thing with JavaScript.
But these are called.
And I think that that's pretty deep seated.
I was wondering if it was part of the ES6 spec.
That I'm not sure about. Yeah, I don't know about the UCS2. I've not heard of that. But these strings, like Unicode strings like this, are called astral plane strings. I don't know why they're called that. Ghost strings or something. I don't know. They're from another dimension. But these types of strings, like for those characters, sometimes it takes multiple Unicode characters to build one like visual character. But that spread operator knows how to parse that. So when you spread an astral plane string like that, it will actually separate it into the individual components. Anyway, so we can spread all the things now. So template strings are awesome. This is like, go use this now. If you're not using this, do it. But basically what you get is basically the backtick for the quotes symbols on these, and then you have placeholders that you can use to insert expressions into that string. So just like the name says, they're like templates. So as you can see, we can do just a variable, we can do an expression, or we can do multi-line strings with this. And that's kind of like, those are the main features. There's also a thing called tagged template strings, which are like really funky and weird. I don't think I put an example of that in here. Okay, so class. Everybody knows that this is coming to JavaScript, right? How many people are happy about it? A few of you? Okay. How many people are like angry, like, oh, classes? Okay, everybody else just didn't care, whatever. The class. Alright, so anyway, so now we have class. I'm sure this is going to cause like a lot of confusion when people first come into the language and they think these are like real classes, But I'm sure all of you know this is just sugar for the prototype inheritance method. So we have, you can define a class and you can extend from one class to create a new class. And for right now, there's, like for ES2015, there's a lot that's missing from this. So classes are here, but they're not complete, and they won't be complete until ES2016. At the very least, if not longer. And then, of course, we have the super keyword, which allows us to call the constructor of the parent class. So you can see the example here. I'm calling the super for the constructor of person in order to get the name turned into the Amazing Spider-Man. His superpowers width and stuff. So I was up pretty late when I wrote that slide. So symbol, this one I'm pretty excited about because I'm one of these nerds that I like to go and break shit in a language and like just try all kinds of crazy shit and just see what I can do that should just not happen, things that were not intended. So this is going to allow me to like really play around with some weird stuff. But basically symbols are a way of creating a unique identifier. As you can see on line 2 and 3 here, those two symbols are actually not the same. Even though they're created from the same string, you can only compare it with the original symbol. And there are ways of getting a symbol by name. It's based on what the method is now, but there's like a method on symbol. You can look it up and get the original. So what's that?
I think it's key for symbol.
Might be, yeah. But then you can see here we're using an example of a computer property to create a new property on this object using a symbol.
The purpose of symbols, something like Ruby symbols, where it's basically for resource, like so that you're not allocating. For example, like if you're using strings as keys to things, and you're like recreating those keys all over the place. The symbol instead is a reference rather than like recreating that string every single time. It's going to calculate a hash for it and find that record inside the object or whatever.
Kind of, yeah, but you can easily fall into a trap where you're going to be doing stuff like this, trying to create the same symbol over and over, and instead you're creating a bunch of new
weird
records.
that it creates two different records. It's like in Ruby, if you do colon foo, it's the same colon foo everywhere.
Right, so it's not like that. But
So
you can make it behave like that with the other methods that are available. think I have examples
It's
of
kind
those
of
on
a
the later
weird.
slides.
It's kind of a weird thing. I don't know. What's the
Yeah.
intended use case?
Well, for having unique property identifiers, so say you want to have a particular property in there that you're not going to give anyone else access to it. So this is kind of more like for like metaprogramming. If you're writing a new framework or something like that, and you want to have properties in there that you can access, but somebody outside playing with that object can't necessarily access it directly.
But they can describe, like, see what it's called.
They can see what it is,
But
like, they can
it's
inspect it, but they can't like go and change the values of it and that kind of thing.
Would you use it for making quids or something like that? Or
Making what?
quids? I don't know.
Yeah, you
like,
can. I could see that being a use case for it.
Or like in React, if you had to do like a key or something on something, would you recommend do that?
You could probably use it that way. Yeah, I can see that. And there's also other things like, which I believe is on a later slide, but there's other properties on this symbol object like symbol.iterator, which allows you to define what the iterator is on the object. It's really weird stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. Go ahead.
So in ES2015, can you only use the quality operator there, or can you use like equal to? Like you're using pretty much the triple.
Right.
You're saying it's sim2 exactly sim3, right? Exactly equal to sim3. Can you still do like just like it is equal to, not like exactly equal to?
Are you talking about like the loose equality?
The loose equality.
Yeah, I didn't try that, but I still think in that case it still won't match. But there are like new, which we'll see in a later slide, there are new features that allow you to compare things better than doing the equals and so on. But let's go ahead and move forward because we'll get to some of that stuff. So reflect is another cool one. Basically, this is normalizing some of these quirks that we've had for a long time in JavaScript, especially when there's a push to ES5. They wanted to add a lot of features that basically people had been kind of like hacking into it. Like they added them as official features at that time, but they didn't know really where to put some of these things. So we got some weird stuff like object.get prototype of. Why is that on object? Like prototypes, I mean, functions are objects, right? But it would make more sense to have it on a function, maybe. I don't know. It's probably one of those things they argued about for days, and they were just like, just put it on object. Shut up, just put it on. Anyway, so we got reflect now, and that's going to be kind of the new home for a lot of those things that didn't quite really fit where they are now. And of course, object will keep all of those ones that already exist, and, for backwards compatibility. But so now we have better ways of doing things. So you can see this is the way you're used to doing it right here. You can do it like a function, apply object argument, or you can directly use the function object, apply call, blah blah blah. And then here's the equivalent now: reflect.apply your function, whatever context, and then whatever arguments. So it makes it a lot more kind of visible and more obvious what it is exactly you're trying to do. It's a lot less complicated than these, a lot easier to read. And there's the get prototype of that I was mentioning, so that lives on reflect now. It behaves slightly differently than the object.get prototype of. So object.get prototype of, I believe it returns the object or returns null, depending on what it matches. Or no, I'm thinking of a different one, not get prototype of. There's another one. But normally it would return the object. The new one returns just a Boolean true or false if it matches. This one, get prototype of, would return the actual object though. Anyway, so both of these, get prototype of and get own property descriptor, those are ones that already exist, but they're on object, and now we're kind of putting them where they officially belong now. Anyway, so we have some new static methods on object. So object.assign, which is great. We've been wanting something like that for forever. We've had to rely on, Lodash or underscore or various other, do-it-yourself solutions and whatever. But now we have an official method here that will combine objects together. And then this one, this is what I was mentioning before, object is It's just a better way of comparing things. So if you take an object and a reference to that object, and you say object is, it will be truthy, right? Unless it's a symbol. Then you got different problems. All right, so a couple other different ones. Oh, set prototype. Oh, that's the other one that I was thinking of. All right, so not a whole lot to say about those. I don't want to go like too in depth with it, but I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this, right? And this comes up like at least on a daily basis. I need to compare not a number to not a number. Why can't I do that? Now, for all of those times when we need to know, is not a number not a number? Now we know. So object is gives us that ability. So excited. All right, now we have octal and binary literals now. So, we have all kinds of different literals like Unicode literals and so on. Now we can describe octals and binaries in the same way. Interesting, I guess, if you're like doing some crazy math stuff with this, but moving on. So some new string static methods. This is one of the ones that I was telling you is, it's like it's not the template, not the tag template string, but it's something related to that. They both work in the same way. So this string.raw here, this is actually a function call. How many people would have guessed that? So for some weird reason, these particular tag-like methods that operate on template strings don't require in fact, you can't use the parentheses around the value. I don't know. Anyway, so that's pretty much the only new static method for strings. Sorry, strings. But you can see how it works. The bottom there, string.raw, is where you put a value into it and make it a multiple line. That's what string.raw produces at the very bottom. Yeah, it looks like you made a typo or something. Yeah, those are pretty strange. It's going to take some getting used to. All right, but we do have a handful of new prototype methods on strings. So you can do code point at, normalize, repeat, starts with, ends with, includes. Those last three especially are going to be really useful for doing matching and comparison and that sort of thing. So we don't necessarily have to build a regular expression every time we want to match, does this string end in a period or something like that. And then repeat, you can make a string repeat as many times as you want. Some of these things are kind of wonder how much is this really going to get used?
Why would they put this in a language as opposed to using it in a language?
A lot of these things, so like code point at, is a good example, and then if we go back to back, stuff like this. Again, a lot of these features are more for like the meta programming world. So, Angular 3 is going to be using a lot of this kind of stuff, or whatever. React 27. Once they get onto using the ES6 features directly, they'll be using a lot of Yeah, so a lot of these things you can do away with Lodash now because a lot of these things are built in now. Alright, so was there a question?
Oh, I was going to say, it's also probably done at a low level, so it's probably a lot faster than just doing it within a function of the library.
Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how the browser implements it, because Lodash is still faster than most browsers with certain operations that it does.
Lodash will also try to fail over to whatever is faster.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So if anybody couldn't hear, he was saying that Lodash also fails over to using the faster, whichever one is faster, the native implementation or their implementation. So that's a good point as well. But now we have more of these things built in, so now Lodash has more to choose from. All right, so we got some new number properties. So you can check, is the number finite? Is it an integer? Is it a safe integer? So in other words, having a decimal in it means that's not safe. So again, like, is safe integer? You're going to need to be doing like some crazy math calculations to ever care about that. Anyway. And here again, Now we can see if man is man. All right, and then a couple new like properties, epsilon and min-max safe integers. And a whole heap of math methods. Does anybody care about these? One person? Well, you're outvoted. So we got some non-strict function semantics. And I think, I don't know for sure, taking a fairly educated guess here, some of these things are being built in for backwards compatibility with sites that were built using like quirky features that, you know, some browsers, I'm not going to name names, may have built in that were not actually part of the spec. They just said, okay, that's easy, we'll just throw it in. Why not? But they put it in as you can only use it in non-strict mode. So that particular aspect of it right there kind of tells me, okay, that's something for backwards compatibility. Because if you're going to be using strict mode, that means you shouldn't be doing this crap. I don't even know what you mean. Okay. All right, so, oh, this one definitely. I know for sure that this one is a backwards compatibility thing. I'm sure probably everyone in here has seen this dot, you know, the double underscore proto double underscore thing before. That was kind of, I don't remember which browser was guilty of starting that, but it was kind of like a hack way of building in a better way of interacting with a prototype as an object. And it was never officially in the spec. And now we're just going to say, okay, we're making it official, but we're only using it for backwards compatibility. You should not be using it. Give it away. So anyway, then proto you can do the object with it. And then we have some regex syntax extensions. Okay. So, actually, a lot of those are pretty cool, but there's nothing really to show, so that's why I just stuck a little picture there for you. All right, so those are, as of at least like last night anyway, could have changed by this morning. Those were all the ones that are completely supported in all the Evergreen browsers. All right, so what was that? No less than like a dozen, close to 20, I think, features, right? So even if you want to use just like one of those features, you can start using it right now. All right, so let's go on to some features that are almost fully supported, but not quite. Use these with caution. This is one of the ones I'm most excited about. There's a lot of cool things you can do with this. I'm not going to go into real in-depth with that. That's probably like a whole new talk all of its own. But just a really short example you can take. Basically what this is doing is taking an object and kind of wrapping it in a new interface, a proxy, if you will, that anything you do to that proxy object will happen to the real object unless you tell it not to. Unless you change the behavior somehow. Does that make sense? And that's just one way to use proxies. Anyway, so those are really complicated. Again, this is probably, you're not going to touch these unless you're building a language. You might see them, but it's not going to be common for you to have to write those, on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, maybe test or something like that.
So
Yeah.
you could not just go here, you could convert values.
Yeah, exactly. So say you have a validator and maybe you decide like, you have some crazy validation rule that like every word of their blog post has to be capitalized. Like, just the first letter or something like that. Well, maybe you don't want to like piss off your users by making them go and completely rewrite all of that. So you can just capitalize it yourself if you want or something like that. Really bad example, don't do that. But yeah, it's a good point. You can use it to do other things, not just throw errors. You can mutate the values or something like that. And then this one is really big. This one you will hopefully use on a day-to-day basis if you know what's good for you. This basically, we've had it like ever since 2005-ish. We've had 1,000,001 libraries under the sun, all coming up with their own way to do asynchronous style. And then at some point, someone came up with the promise A+ specification, which kind of reined in some of that. But now we have an official promise built in. Shorthand.
Are getter setters compatible with asynchronous code? Like this?
Depending on how you use it, yeah. I mean, you can combine any of these things together as long as.
Well, like basically, like you want to wait on your getter setter to complete before you do the next then. That's basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, so you may be able to do that with like a combination of promises and proxies or something like that. So a lot of power in that proxy stuff. You guys should definitely go and like read about that at least, just to kind of see like what interesting stuff it's capable of. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a way you can do it.
Just a quick side note on promises is, and this is probably in your bad section, I would assume, but if you're going to use the new asynchronous function stuff that's coming out, then promises become a really big deal.
Yeah, so promises are a really big deal for async functions, but unfortunately those are ES2016. So we won't be talking about those today.
Anyway, begin to love promises.
Yes, you will love them. You will learn to love them. Anyway, so even if you don't interact with this particular promise directly, I guarantee you every jQuery and every other language that's using some kind of promise behavior is eventually going to switch over to using this. Why? Because it's a lot less boilerplate for them to write. Anyway, so you can create a new promise. I usually wrap that like in a function to pass whatever value I need into it, but just keeping it simple there. So just creating a new promise, and then when it's done, do something with it or handle the error. And you can create promises that are already resolved or already rejected. So you're not actually even doing anything with it. You're just saying, resolve it immediately with this. Sets, maps, weak sets, and weak maps. So these are almost fully supported. I think every browser has mostly got it. There's like a couple little like minor features here and there that are not implemented, but for the most part you can use them. And I'm not going to go into real great detail on these, but they're all very kind of closely related to each other. But you can see an example of a map. You can kind of liken it to an object. It's very similar in how it works, but underlying details of how that's implemented is a bit different. And then a set is like basically an array that can only have uniques in it. It can't have the same value more than once. Yeah.
Is there like recommended when I should use map versus when I should use object? Like is the map higher performance?
It can be, yeah. Well, memory, yes, absolutely. Weak maps are what you want to use, or weak sets, the weak ones are what you want to use if you're doing something that's really high performance and you really need to make sure you keep your memory in check. Because these ones will release the references to whatever they have inside for garbage collection. Right, exactly. Set and map will not release. Yeah.
What about like order of attributes? Does it set the order of attributes differently than
You know what? I didn't look into that. That's a good question. So if somebody wants to make a note of that, we can look it up later.
Hey, guys, real quick.
Yeah.
Sets, being that they can only have unique values, does it do anything for you in the sense of if you throw two the same value at it, it just ignores the second one?
Right. Just if you set, so if I did set 1, 2, 3 twice, just the second one, it would not like throw an error or anything, but it just wouldn't show it.
The most important thing is when you set operations on those like intersection
Yeah.
and disjunction and stuff like that.
Right.
Stuff you have to use with that work.
Right. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things that you can do with them. Again, I didn't want to get like too in depth with that, but they're really cool. There's a lot of stuff, awesome stuff you can do with it. Go and look it up. Go and learn about it. Right. Generators, also really cool. You can basically make functions that spit out values constantly. So you can make it spit out like from a limited set of things, and it just gives you each of the values one at a time. Or like in this example here, you can create like a counter or something like that just as many times as you want it, it'll give you a new value. So you just keep counting up for infinity if you want. Be careful with that. Don't put that in the for loop.
Why do you need the while true?
Well, that's what's making it an endless loop. So basically, while true, if you were to go in like your DevTools or something and say while true, console log hello or something, you'd get hello indefinitely until your browser crashed. Right. Yeah. So that's just my way of, I'm just incrementing the value. So I could sit here calling next value as many times as I want, and I'm always going to get a new value. Yes.
Are all variable assignments that do not use the word let or var, are those all locally scoped?
Well, so var is not still. var has not changed. It's going to work the same way it always has. But let and const, those are locally scoped.
So that
block
by
scope.
default is const.
What's that?
That by default is const.
What is?
Just there's no keyword before n. The n equals 0.
Oh, hey. It was late when I wrote that.
I was wondering if that was like
So that would technically be var, and that's now global.
okay.
Yeah, this is like 2 a.m.
So the star syntax.
Right, so that star, I should have put that in bold so you guys could see that more clearly. That star right there is what is making that a generator versus a normal function. And by the way, just a side note, you cannot create a generator from an arrow function. Sad but true. Hopefully, maybe someday, maybe ES2015. Who knows? Arrow functions! All right. So, obviously just a much more concise, shorter syntax for writing a function. These are especially great for callback functions. Because, when you're trying to pass a function into another function, sometimes it's just doing something really simple, like a one-liner, and you don't want to necessarily write function, parentheses, curly brackets, and break it into separate lines and all that. Or even if you do make it a one-liner. This is a little bit shorter, a little bit more concise. I was just going to mention that. So the other benefit with arrow functions is lexical scoping. They do not have their own scope. So they take on the context of their parent, whatever parent scope they happen to be created in. And then you can do shortcut things like this. Console log obviously doesn't return me a value, but why put all the curly brackets when it is going to evaluate that? It'll still return undefined, but it'll get executed. So if you wanted to return a value, like that's what this one is doing here, it's shortcutting that so you don't have to say, you don't have to use the keyword return, right? Whatever follows that arrow there, if it's some sort of expression that produces a value, it will try to return that to whatever its caller is. All right. Did somebody have a question? I thought so. And of course, I can't talk about arrow functions without showing off a Y combinator. So I've been obsessed with these things for a little while now. I wrote a blog post about it. But anyway. Confused? Those things, my God, it took me like a year to figure out even how they work. Okay, so now we have let. We just talked about that. So let is block scope. You can see right here, this block B will only exist within that for. The same thing applies to const, which we'll see in a sec. So just a couple of examples. They're kind of like constants in that you can't declare them again, but you can reassign the value. So if you try to declare it twice, you get a syntax error. Here, if you try to reference something that was declared within a block, you get a reference error for that. Oops, wrong way. And then const are pretty much exactly the same. The only difference is that you can't even assign a new value. So you can't redeclare it, you can't reassign it, and it has the same block scoping.
It's shallow for const. So if your const expression is an object, you can change the underlying
Right.
properties of the object, you just can't change the reference.
That's correct, because objects are by reference. So you can change their content, you just can't change what object is referenced. So yeah, excellent point. All right, for of loops. So you guys are familiar with the for in loop, right? You can use on an array basically. For of is just another way of doing this on arrays and objects. not much to say about it, but it's nice to have now. What's that? So it's just a simpler way of doing like array for each.
Then that element, could you use it outside the scope of that for? Like after that for, is that element going to be valid, or is it going to be?
No, because it's let.
Right.
Yep.
So that's like a use. It's gone after it out of there, so you can't
Right.
use it. Or you can't step on anything else.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can pass either object or array to the right side. Yeah.
What do you mean? I'm just using an array literal there just to make it simple.
And that can also be an object.
Oh, yeah. So if it was an object, you'd be iterating over the properties of it. I guess I should have put another example. So with an object, you can split, like where you have the let here, you can split the keys and values into two different variables. And so you get two variables for the price of one, basically. You get, I guess that's more of an example of destructuring more than anything, but still. Anyway, so the of is what's important. It lets you do those types of things a little bit easier. So, did I have? No. You're doing that, right? So typed arrays, there's a whole bunch of new typed arrays. Again, you have to be doing some pretty low-level stuff to ever want to use these. So we'll just skip past that.
So one odd thing about JavaScript I see is that there's still no unsigned 64-bit integer.
That's true. Yeah.
So if you want to deal
only
with really
up to
big
32.
integer hashes or something,
Yeah, I wonder if that's just a limitation with the browser itself or what. All right, so properties can actually have an order to them now, so you can actually count on the fact that the properties will be in a specific order. ES5, we couldn't ever really guarantee that. Most of the time it worked out okay, but every once in a while it would jump up and bite you in the ass. Now it won't. Not really a way to show an example of that, so just move it over. All right, so we have block level function declaration now as well. So before, what would happen is this inner function actually would be declared in the outer scope, but now this function will only exist inside of its outer function. So that's all that is. Now we can define them or declare them at a block level. All right, new.target, again, kind of, for meta purposes mostly. If you're creating, constructors, and you need to know, was this constructor function called with using the new keyword, you can now say, well, was the target the same object as what was called, right? So before you had to do like all this like instance of crap, now it's just much simpler. Okay, Unicode point escapes. Not much to say about it, but you can see the equivalent on the right hand. You have to use two Unicode escapes and then a code point escape. It's a little easier. I don't know when anybody's ever going to use that. Oh my god. HTML style comments. Why? So this is a thing now, you guys. Now in your JavaScript, you can use HTML style comments. Yeah, maybe JSX, that'll be helpful.
There you go.
But I don't think JSX really counts, does it? Because JSX takes care of that on its own. Like, it didn't need that in the language to do that.
JSX makes you do curlies and then do the regular slash.
Oh, you have to put the curlies around them.
Yeah.
Right.
So whose idea was this?
Yeah, okay, well, maybe that'll be better for,
For Dreamweaver users?
All I know is that's what I think of it. I see HTML style comments and I'm like, alright, so the bad. So these are the ones that have really, really, really kind of iffy support, but they, at least one browser has a little bit of support. So we can now look at what the prototype is of a bound function. So if you bind a function, you can still get its prototype. It used to be that, I don't know if any of you guys have ever run into this, but when you bind a function, like I was working on a library years ago where I had to know was this function already part of this set, right? We didn't have sets yet, right? So I had to try and compare that function, because it's an object, so you can compare them. But if we bound the function, then it would not match, because they were no longer the same object. But basically now there's a way to check these things a little bit better. It's not quite, it's still not great, but it's better. So you can at least get the prototype of it now. Not too much more you can say about that. So this will be fun for, you know, people who help out on Slack or Stack Overflow a lot, because we're going to get tons of people going on Stack Overflow saying, hey, I extended array and now everything's completely fucked. What do I do? So we just, you know, made Stack Overflow more popular is what we're trying to do here. But basically all the built-ins, array, you know, regular expression, function, all of those things, you can subclass them now. Weird. And we have a few, or just a couple, I guess, new static methods on array, so you can turn an object that looks like an array into an actual array. You can take, you know, a few arguments and turn them into an array. Again, this is more like stuff Lodash will use. You kind of don't necessarily mess with that too much. And then copy within, find index field, key values, entries. These are all new things on the prototype. Actually, earlier today at work, I accidentally gave someone some misinformation because I was thinking of this new feature. So now we have object.keys. That's already been in ES5. But now we have, on the actual array itself, take that array and just say .keys and get its keys, rather than doing object.keys and putting the array in there. So that, or the object, whatever it is you want to use. But that's a little bit better than doing it the object.keys way. Again, that's one of those things where it's like, why is object.keys even a thing? Like, getting the keys as an object, sure, but makes more sense, I think, in this context. All right, so values and entries. I think those are, what's that? So an entry is like when you have an array of, like, I want to use the word sets because they're not real sets, but you know, you take an array and you have, inside of that, each element is an array of two things. Those are, each one of those things is an entry. So, not sure why we needed that built in, but we have it now. And then the values would be the right half of those things. All right, so functions now have a name property. So if you access .name on a function, you get what the name of the actual function is. This would be really good for, like, you know, stack traces and stuff like that. You know how often you look at those stack traces and you get, like, it says anonymous function or something like that. Now just name all your functions, and then whatever library you're using can know what it is instead of just saying anonymous function. All right, so these are the other things I was talking about on symbol. These have really bad support so far. I mean, we have like the core symbol object, but we don't have all of these kind of the well-known symbols is what they're called. So like iterator, search, split, match.
These are all species.
Don't go there. I think species has something to do with like instance of. So you can check, is it like an instance?
Seems like somebody had a really hard naming problem.
Yeah. So basically what you can do with these, you take these and stick one of them into a computed property on an object, and now you've just redefined the iterator of that object. So, yeah. Which is something that's fun to play with, but again, it's more metaprogramming than anything. So you can see a lot of these features, like all those ones that were right up front, those were all features like that we want and that we can use right now. But a lot of these features that have less and less support, we're getting more down into like, this is all metaprogramming kind of stuff. So it should give you a good idea, like if you want to start using ES6 now, sorry, ES2015 now, most of what you want is already supported. All right, destructuring, one of my favorites. So you can destructure parameters. So this function here, if you call it with an array, that array will get split into, individual variables. And objects can be destructured. So if you pass in a property that has, an object that has the property name, that will become an individual variable called name, which you can then do stuff with. So you see example here, pass a name Bob. So this variable name will be Bob. Okay, so that's really cool in my opinion. Destructuring assignment is where you take, an object and you can assign multiple, like for instance an array or an object, something like that. You can assign multiple variables at once from that. So it makes your job a lot easier. And you can see here, I put in a kind of a little gotcha example. You can actually add some extra commas to skip over ones that you don't want. So I skipped the number 2 and put 3 into B there. Yeah, good to know. And then a destructuring declaration is literally the exact same thing, except you can put the var or let or const, whatever you're using, in front of it at the same time. So you don't have to do it in 2 steps like we did there. All right, default function parameters. How many people have gone through the trouble of creating a function that checks to see, well, did this argument have a value? Was it a function? Was it an object? Trying to figure out what was actually passed in on like the second or third parameter. How many people have done that? A couple of people. I've had to do that a lot, so I'm pretty excited about this one because now you can just say, say A is like the object you're operating over, and then B is maybe just some options for it, right? You can set what those options are by default right there, and you don't have to go and say, well, if options was undefined, make it this.
You showed a vast operator earlier, like with the rest of the parameters could be an array.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to get that into an object or a hash? It's like in Python, you can do like asterisk r's, or you can do like asterisk kwr's, and you get like a dictionary. You get like a dictionary of parameters.
You mean to like get it into a set or something like that?
It gets into like a hash, or it's just a JavaScript object in JavaScript.
I think we can do something similar to that with the destructuring parameters, but I don't know if it's exactly what you're talking about. I'm not real familiar with Ruby. Played around with Ruby like 2006, but didn't get real deep into it. Where were we? So regular expressions have a couple new flags that we can play with. Right now, the only one that is even supported in all the browsers, in fact, is Y. So Y just allows you, what is it called again? It's hard to explain. So if the reference has already matched, so like this P or the B or something like that, if it's already been matched, you can tell it how many times to, or when to stop matching it, I guess. I don't even know if I'm describing it correctly. But then the U flag is for Unicode, so now you can, find happy faces in your strings. Alright, almost done. So the ugly, these are the ones that like literally no browser has support for. Sadly, we don't care. So prototype flags, you can get the flags of a regular expression. Boo. But this is the one that's really got me kind of wishing we had already. Tail call optimization. Who knows what that is? Anybody? A couple of people back here. All right, so basically, how many people have seen this error in the console? My students back there better be raising your hands. So this is when you call a function and it starts building a stack. Usually that happens with recursion. And it just calls too many times and the browser runs out of memory or something like that. Or, it prevents itself from running out of memory by setting a limit on it. Anyway, so now with tail call optimization, we don't have to worry about that. You can have a function recurse into itself to the end of time, and the browser will not care. So, have fun debugging that one when you fall into that trap. But it's a really exciting feature because this is going to make like recursive functions and things that do similar stack operations. They're going to be like 10 times more performant now. So Lodash, you think Lodash is fast now? Wait till you see it when we get this. All right, so that's it. There's only 2 features that have 0 support right now. So not too bad. How do you guys feel about ES2015? Is anybody like ready to run out right now and go write some ES6? Somebody, hasn't tried it before. So what do we do now? Go learn it.
So we didn't talk about like importing exports from modules or anything.
Because it's not in ES2015. So you have to wait a little longer on that one.
Where does that come from then?
What do you mean?
Imports and modules.
Right, so it's ES2016. So, I mean, it's in the spec, but it's just not, like the ES2016 spec isn't final yet. So.
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah.
I saw some news on Twitter about imports, how the new import statement is not as what you talking about, how an import statement can't reference a folder and get its index file, like that's actually part of the spec. Oh, no, I mean, that's
Is
the way
that true?
Babel works. Yeah, so that's the way Babel works, and that's the way most people are expecting it to work. So my guess is it's going to actually make it into the spec because people are using it like that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was like, I thought I was using it that way. But, yeah, so you're saying the spec
What
currently,
you're
at least,
saying
is not.
explains a lot of things, right? Is that unlike CommonJS, imports can't just reference a folder and derive the index file for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, so I guess by the specification, that's not what it's supposed to do.
That's what I was
But
saying.
Babel is like, we don't care, we're doing it anyway.
Sure.
All right. Right. It's one of those things they're just like, you know what, that's stupid. We're doing it the right way. Yeah, I think the thing, we're kind of way off topic now, but I think the thing with import that bugs me the most is that it can only be at the top level, like it can't be inside of a block.
Oh my god, the thing that bugs me the most is that you can't make the string of the thing you're importing dynamic. That would be
Right.
extremely important.
You never should have been doing it in the first place.
There's
doing it.
There's use cases. No, there's not. It's not doing it. No.
I think what Brad's talking about is when you do like var equals and then require it right in there, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the path that you're importing from cannot be a variable. It has to be a static string.
Oh, really?
Not
Right.
concatenated at all.
Right. Yeah, so anyway. So this is my last slide. Let me just go through this real quick and then we'll open it to like questions and discussion or whatever. So, what the hell are you waiting for? I don't know, ES2015 though. Go learn it. There's no excuses anymore. But my boss won't let me. Why are you telling your boss about it? Do you ask your boss how to write a function, right?
Ask forgiveness.
Exactly, just do it. Your boss isn't going to care or know. He just wants you to get your job done. Honestly, like some of these features will help you get your job done a little bit easier, so your boss will probably be happy about it. All right, so what about older browsers? I have to support IE6 still. Well, sorry. Sucks to be you. But if you have to support like IE 10 or 11 or whatever, it's not too bad. You can use Babel. There's polyfills that you can use if you don't want to use Babel. So there's a lot of different options. So hopefully through this talk you saw at least kind of a glimpse, even without Babel, without any kind of polyfill, there's already several features that we can take advantage of right away. What about the modern browsers that don't even support, tail call optimization yet or whatever? Well, again, not tail call optimization is a bad example, but for those other features, just use Babel. It's the answer to all your problems. Anyway, so support for all of these is growing like really quickly. I mean, literally, those first slides, the stats that I was showing you guys, I had to kind of lie to you guys a little bit because I didn't want to go and change all those slides. Literally, Chrome just released like a whole crap ton of new support for a lot of these features. So Chrome was at 65%.
Is that the guy from GitHub?
Yeah.
Kang-X.
Yeah.
I was looking at that.
So Chrome went from like in the time it took me to write these slides, they went from 65% to over 90% on supporting these features. So, and that's not just them. Firefox and Microsoft, they're all moving along at a nice steady pace on these. So by the end of the year, we should have the desktop Evergreen browsers should be like at least 90%, all of them. Anyway, so that's it. Thank you guys. There's me.
Thanks, Tim. We can probably do questions and answers, but before, I just wanted to make sure we get some announcements and the tickets for the raffle for the shirts. Justin, who runs the online group, and myself are going to be doing, we're going to be doing a joint meetup next month. It's already been announced on the meetup page, so if you want to go and take a look, you want to talk about what's going on?
Yeah, so we're going to have Auth0 is actually going to send out a developer evangelist. Kind of their tagline is add authentication to your web and mobile apps in 10 minutes or less. Got a lot of cool features as a